This is Van Milk the Ghost, and we're live on air. We're going to talk to Eric Robinson, Navigating Shadows, the Inside and Underbelly. With you, we're going to talk to you about your career. So you have a book,
I do.
Irreverent, from
Yeah.
saving souls to chasing sinners in the FBI. And we're going to talk about that. We've got your link up here, so people can check that out. But I want to welcome you to the Family Like a Ghost podcast. We talk to people live. We're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Kick. One thing I like to ask before we get to the whole heart of your story is what motivates you and why do you do what you do?
Well, right now, what I do is be retired, so the motivation is just getting up in the morning. But spending 24 years in the FBI, uh, it, it it was a noble experience, getting to be part of a storied institution. So once I got in, there was already that mentality and morale. There was the atmosphere in the FBI of we do things excellently, we do it right, we
Mhm.
follow the laws, and we help people. And it's easy to want to be a part of that, especially since the people that I worked with in the FBI were so professional, competent, and they were the best people that I'd ever met. So get up each day and you've got a noble purpose and you're working with great people. That's an easy thing to have a purpose for.
So, what made you want to go from being a reverend to being in the FBI? Was there some kind of critical thing that happened where you felt like, well, I need to be in this organization?
Yeah, there was. I mean, for one thing, I've had people ask me like, "Why join the FBI?" And I think, well, that's just a silly question, because it's cool. Who doesn't who doesn't think? I had related to my book, my one of my copy editors was saying, "Hey, you don't explain why you got in the FBI," and I said, "It's because it's cool." And she said, "Well, yeah, my husband, I don't think would want to be in the FBI." And I said, "Oh, but did you ask him?" And then she comes back later, is like, "Yeah, he said it would be cool." But for me specifically, I spent about 12 years in Christian ministry. I was pastoring a Baptist church in Western New York. And we had a church of outreach, which was great. We were successful. We're reaching people. But the issue for me was as those people were bringing their problems and asking me to help deal with those, I found it impossible to separate myself from their burdens, which was a, a bug of mine. It was, I didn't have anything different than other pastors had. I just couldn't let go of those things, which resulted in me having stress related headaches every single day for 2 years.
Mm.
So it came to a point where even though I enjoyed what I was doing, I found purpose in it. I thought we were successful too. I told my wife, I've got to find a job with less stress, and so I joined the FBI.
Wow, it would seem that would be stressful too, but I guess it was a different type of stress.
Different type, yeah.
So, what are unique qualities it takes to be a good FBI agent in your mind?
So the difference with the FBI versus police is police get called to a scene, they deal with something, they turn it over, maybe they bring some charges and they're rolling through issues. In the FBI, we work long-term investigations, enterprise investigations. And so number one, there has to be a tenacity to continue. It's like the difference between playing the NFL and playing in Major League Baseball.
Mhm.
162 games, you got to stick with it for a long time and keep that focus. And also, there needs to be a creativity because as you're trying to not just find the depth of an organization and root people out, you're trying to find the breadth as well. And so I found that collaborating with colleagues, coming to them saying, "Hey, you have any ideas on this? I'm stumped here," or just knowing that as I've got these 4, 5, 6 investigations I'm working and my partner has those too, I'm hearing what they're looking at, their subjects, getting familiar with their cases, and then maybe saying, "Hey, I've got an informant that might be useful, might be able to get in on this guy," and then, start working together in creative ways that way.
It seems like it's more like root cause analysis, and you're doing a deeper like analysis. It's like almost like the behavioral science aspect of things.
A
Because I
little
know
bit.
there's a whole science like division that's like different aspect. But do you guys all kind of move more like it seems more that you're taking on like a level of depth that seems to be more professional. Not that the police aren't professional, but you're
Right.
going into a level, it seems like, yeah, that's like a master's degree, PhD going direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like with the police, my brother-in-law was a cop, and obviously we worked a lot with cops. Their mandate is to police. So guy sees somebody else or has an informant who can make a drug buy, they make the buy, bust the guy, and they probably end there. Whereas we are then moving up the chain and trying to find
Take
where
a
do
whole
those
organization down.
and because we have the time, and also, we're actually worldwide, but like, we're across the United States. So if a guy in Canton, Ohio does a bust, he's cleaning up his city. We're looking to see how that supplier is from Atlanta, and now we're moving to Atlanta and sending leads there. That's going to perhaps the border of Mexico and Texas. So they're sending leads to El Paso. We're getting on phones. So yeah, a lot more that we can dig into and then
More
send to other.
holistic. Yeah, you're more holistic and you're kind of seeing the big picture. Because
Right.
I'm in IT. So like when we design something, like we have like a context diagram. We have the use case, we got the business case. We go look at like what is the actual problem. So you're
Yeah.
doing like root cause analysis, right?
Yeah.
You're
And,
trying to figure out where something's like what's the source, where does it go, where does it end up?
Yeah, and then our analysts are bringing out charts where here's the connections, here's the phones, here's the possible links, and part of it too, like you mentioned, like getting your PhD or your master's. I was working financial crimes for a time, and I get on this guy who's selling bonds. Now I'm studying because I've got to know this at least
You
as
need
good
to
as him.
understand how the bond market works and like what is he doing? Like, well, how is he making a profit? What is he doing? What's the low edge cases? Like maybe he's taking
Yep.
advantage of a loophole or whatever. He's doing something.
And I have the luxury too. I have the ability now. I'm talking to guys from the SEC to say, "Hey, tell me how this works." This guy was trying to sell like $120 million REMIC bond from Fannie Mae. So like, okay, what does that mean? And I learned like this is how they bundle them. And okay, I've heard that, but this aspect of the bond is actually the debt.
Mhm.
So it doesn't grow, it actually shrinks as people pay off their houses. So this guy was saying, "Oh, it's gonna mature to 115 million," and well, it was actually gonna mature to nothing, and
Yeah.
it was bought by large companies. You make $50 million this year, now you're gonna buy some debt to offset in taxes, and, I didn't go to school to learn that, but
Yeah,
now
yeah,
I
but he was like yeah, it's like scammers. You get these scammers like going around snake oil salesmen. They
yeah,
can take advantage of people, their ignorance
yeah,
is
and
is core to these financial crimes. People are dependent on people's ignorance to doing like these Ponzi schemes and tricking people.
yeah, but this was a Fannie Mae, like a real bundle. So you look at it and go, "Oh, okay. Yeah, that's great." I get on the surface, I think I know how this works, but they they didn't.
Yeah, because because they get so much legalese. As soon as you get these things, and it's like they got a couple pages of legalese. What do you know? Like
Yeah,
you don't know. You depend on somebody giving you the high level elevator pitch, like what it is, and if they're lying, but they look good,
he
and
looked good.
they got the tie and the suit, and they got the right people. They're at the country clubs or whatever. They got the right connections. Like you're like, okay, that's good. That's all good.
Yeah. Well, and this guy was smart enough too that he would have attorneys. Like, he would hire guys, and it's amazing how when an attorney signs it, people go, "Oh, yeah,
It's
yeah,
gotta be
it's gotta be
good.
it." Yeah, they would never lie. This guy didn't like, the attorney didn't know it either. He's just like, "Yeah, whatever you said tell me to write, I write, and we send it."
Yeah, because people just think there's just all this level of expertise or vetting, and sometimes it's, people are able to scam people, in broad daylight. There's a lot of things going on today. Getting to crypto, it's like okay,
Yeah,
like what's that? It's like you got a rocket scientist making a financial instrument.
yeah.
you know, what does that mean?
Well, I had a guy who once tried to steal a house by simply taking a document and having it notarized. Like, notarized, that doesn't mean anything. It just means you showed your identification, but
Yeah,
that had that air of
it was official.
authenticity. And then he just took it and now he put it, into the auditor's office, and now it seemed official, and yet I mean, it was just a piece of paper, said nothing. But yeah, there's a lot of things that these scammers can use that have that veneer of authenticity, which just does not.
So was your life ever in danger for the different things that you worked on?
Yeah, all the time. So I mean, I was a SWAT operator for 15 years, which I did the same things that other agents did on SWAT. It just meant we were doing them more often. We were doing them with better tools and training and often more dangerous people. And, each time we're called to arrest somebody, and because it hit a threat matrix, now SWAT was asked to come in. We didn't know if these guys were going to oppose us with violence. So many times that happened. And then there were a few occasions where we were actually confronted with in the moment life or death situations. On one occasion, we had to engage, it's almost 2 years ago now, a kid who had mental health problems and involvement in child pornography who rushed us with a baseball bat, and we gave every opportunity to retreat, and we retreated too. And eventually, he made a choice that forced us to engage in deadly force.
Mhm. So it seems like if there's certain type of situations where, yeah, I guess you don't know, what they're gonna do, and it becomes
Nope.
more dangerous. Like, if a criminal is not predictable, then is that, like, the indicator that it's gonna be, like, a highly lethality event? Because if you can't predict what they're gonna do, is there
Yeah, there were certain factors, like if they had guns, if they had a violent criminal history, cameras, dogs, sometimes difficult terrain or possible barricaded situations, then SWAT was going to be called. And we tried to take the choices away from them. So
limit their choices, yeah.
yeah, if we've got 15 guys with rifles and lasers pointed windows, um, a ballistic Bearcat and other vehicles we can be behind, we've had plenty of times where guys look out the window and
Just give
they yeah, they know their only choice is to surrender or die. Maybe they wound one of us, but then they're gonna get killed. So, because of that massive showing, it's
yeah.
much safer because they're like, "What can I do?"
Because you guys have, like, a strategic level, then a tactical level, and then if you take away their choices, then they got only a couple now, unless they're crazy,
Right, right.
right? So you're thinking like, "Okay, well, this guy's, like, wants suicide by cop or FBI, then he's gonna go that way." But
Well,
if this guy is, like, more rational, maybe he was not gonna go that way.
right, and that's why, with some of these, sex predators, some of the, guys involved in child pornography, they started getting bumped up on the threat level because they knew what was waiting for them. They're, you know, possibly gonna try to have suicide by cop. They might shoot it out, see what they can get because
Yeah,
they
'cause they're
knew.
gonna get hurt if they go in, they're gonna get torn up.
Yep, absolutely. And so it was kind of a all or nothing scenario for them, and because of that, now SWAT was being called in more often for these guys.
That's interesting because depending on the type of criminal, because like you're talking about financial criminals, you got these sexual predators, you got the famous like serial type killers that you FBI is known for going after, and then you got terrorists.
Yeah.
You got domestic terrorists, you got foreign terrorists.
Yep.
Um, and so yeah, what level of terrorist type of criminals have you dealt with?
All of them. A lot of the so in the FBI, we would refer to them as racially motivated violent extremists. So put into a category of, here's guys who are white supremacists. Here's guys who are anti-authority or anti-government. Here's people who are motivated by Islam or another religion. And when you have God telling you what's right,
Yeah,
that's a strong motivation,
yeah, they're all off the hook.
right?
They get like random, like, what are they gonna do? You
Yeah,
get like Muhammad Atta is gonna take a plane to a building.
yeah,
And the
absolutely.
guys are gonna go, like a Ruby Ridge, or they're gonna be like the Branch Davidians, or, they're gonna go do something crazy, like, or Heaven's Gate. People are gonna like, Jonestown type of people, where they're gonna do stuff like that.
Right, and, one of my last SWAT operations, we had some kids up in Detroit who were looking to bring violence, and they had a code that it was gonna go down on Halloween, and
Mhm.
so we were one of the many teams along with the hostage rescue team staged. Unfortunately, our job was the night shift, so we were on duty while they were being surveilled. And if something broke and they said, "Nope, let's go now," then we were going to be forced to go activate immediately. And it was crazy that the night before Halloween, they made surveillance, and so now we're like, you know, we went from sitting around and like trying to catch a little snooze now and then to we need to make a plan in case we need to assault houses right now if they're going to take action. And fortunately, they stood down about 2 a.m. I went back to sleep, but
Yeah.
you know, crazy situations where guys they've got the weapons and they've got the motivation, they're ready to go.
Yeah, 'cause, like, so how much of this, like, work now is, like, reading people, like, getting the information off of social media,
Yeah,
get information from, like, intercepts from, like, telephone, text, stuff like that, which I probably don't wanna get into proprietary stuff, but it seems like given the way the tech is today, um, are these guys using encrypted stuff? Or is it
yeah.
harder to find them? Or, like, are they still easy to get?
Well, I mean, the issue is this: if you give me 3 minutes, I'll find guys online who are saying, "I want to create violence." That's easy. It's then a matter of finding the ones who are more likely to. You got the jabberers who are in the white supremacist groups, and they're all saying that we need to kill these people, those people. It's a matter of who's now taking steps. How long can we watch them without violating their rights or
Mhm.
wasting our time? In the case of these kids, it was one where, as it often comes, we get tips. Somebody notes this, passes it on to us, and then the encryption doesn't matter if we just get into their accounts. Like if FBI has means, we do phone taps, we can do even subpoenas or search warrants, and now we're getting some of that information. But uh, it's it's
Yeah, because the
me.
freedom of speech, like, if you got the First Amendment, like, somebody can go as long as they're just talking, but
Yep.
I guess when they start if they start doing something illegal, like, they get guns that are illegal, or they get, like,
Yeah.
things that are gonna be components to something, like, it's gonna be a mass destructive device, that's
Yeah.
illegal, right? So
eh,
then they cross the line, then you can hit them once they cross the line.
Yeah, and we would get white supremacists all the time. They can talk their hate talk, and then we're like, well, how are we going to get them? We can't just wait for them to do something violent. Like, oh, okay, well, he's a felon. He just showed a gun to an informant. We're going to arrest him
You
for
get them
that.
on,
Like
you get them on, yeah, you get
at
them on,
least,
you get them on.
yeah, disrupt them that way.
Yeah, because it's interesting. Because you go back, look at, like, the early '60s, and you had, like, the Weather Underground. You got certain groups that were doing things that were very, very easy to get because they were blowing up, throwing bombs everywhere. It's like somebody's blowing up bombs like in the '60s, in the '70s. They like you're gonna go after bombers,
Y-
because they're actually actively bombing.
Yeah, and then the FBI just sets aside the Constitution to try to find them and does search warrants. Well, does searches without warrants and taps without
And then
warrants
they got
too.
in trouble. Then you can, yeah, because they're pretty obvious, but you still went and did something you didn't need to do if they're so obvious.
Yeah, yeah.
But, yeah, because that's the whole COINTELPRO and all this other stuff that was going on. Because I was like, I went to Bowdoin and I actually did a paper on COINTELPRO. But, that's interesting. Like what's going on with current events as a former agent? Like, what do you feel about what's going on today? If you want to talk about that.
Uh, there's a lot going on today. I'll tell you. I mean, without knowing specifically like what you're referencing, I'll give you like just a basic temperature of the FBI. So when January 6th happened a few years ago, all of a sudden agents start getting fed cases. It's not guys saying, "Oh, I'm going to try to find this guy." Headquarters then has a unit. They say, "Here's a guy. Here's a report. Somebody called in a tip, said this guy might be there." And then we're spending time looking through videotape and so much work for eventually getting, maybe the guy gets 6 months. You're like, I worked on this case for 8 months and now he gets 6 months, or they
Mhm.
get some misdemeanor, and nobody was excited about it, but we were doing our jobs. And then the president just dismisses all the charges and people just kind of shrug and move forward.
Yeah, 'cause it seems like if somebody's a criminal, then they're a criminal.
Yeah.
And it's like when it becomes like political to say, well, certain people, if they do something, they're not criminal, and if some other person does the same exact same thing, they are criminal. So that's the kind of gets toward like, well, how does that make somebody feel when they're in law enforcement when people are making choices when there is the law?
Yeah.
Like if there's a law that says X is against the law, it shouldn't
Yeah.
matter like who does it, right? If X is against the law, it's against the law.
Well, there's always going to be situations where I come in and I say, "Hey, man, this guy broke the law," and the prosecutor says, "Yeah, however, that's going to be a hard one to prove in court." E- they and I came to understand, of course, that the prosecutors can't take cases that have a likelihood of going to trial because they only have so many bodies. Trial's gonna tie tie them up for a month. It's so and so they I get that, I understand it. And then there's times you bring, "Hey, here's 10 guys that I want to indict, and I can prove that they all broke the law," and they come back with, "Well, we're gonna take 7 of them." And now you're left with knowing for certainty, here's guys who broke the law.
And they're
These
still
guys
out.
are and they're just
It is
walking
out
away.
there.
Yeah,
So it seems like there's a level of like I guess the prosecutors they get to be somewhat political. So they make choices that maybe like if you're a line soldier on the FBI and you see somebody is like that guy's a threat.
yeah,
But this guy makes some kind of diplomatic political decision and decides, and you might think this guy's a real threat.
yeah.
Yeah. Because like you get sometimes you get these informants and they're actually still killing people, you know, and you're like,
Mine didn't. Mine didn't.
but there are cases where they're kind of in the public where you had like informants that were actually actively doing stuff.
Yeah.
But I guess they were valuable for a certain degree, but they're actually still threatening the public. And it's like,
Well, and so because of that, then we bring in now there's reform, and so there's regular attorney general guidelines that we read to our informants as if that's going to make a difference. Like just reading guidelines will make them do something or not. And there's regular reviews. So the FBI had abuses, and of course, then their response is, okay, we're going to put more standards on this, and now we got to take this online class that talks about this. And I before I retired, I told everybody it's my goal to someday do something so wrong that you guys will always remember me because you have to take a yearly class for how I screwed up.
it's just interesting. Like there's just so much, you could come into thinking, something's black and white. But as you get older in this world, as you go along, there's all these gray areas,
Yeah.
and people make decisions. It's like, oh, it's the least of a bad decision. It's like the least worst decision out of all the bad decisions I got to make. Do
Yeah.
you find that that was happening a lot, or did you feel good about what was going on?
Well, I felt good. I mean, it comes to an acceptance of recognizing I mean, I started more black and white at the beginning, just as you say, but then you do realize, having gone through trials, like, oh my gosh, yeah, that took up so much of my time, prosecutor's time. I try to get a search warrant done from a prosecutor and I can't because he's tied up in trial. So, yeah, you do come to realize that, okay, it is frustrating. It's disappointing to see criminals not uh, have to own up for their acts, but there's just a matter of fact where we didn't have enough bodies to get everything done that we needed to.
And what's it like when you're dealing with like the underbelly of society? Do you get like numb to like their behavior of the criminal behavior? Or do you like start to not to be empathetic, but to understand some of these criminals because you're around them so much?
No, definitely get to understand them a bit. I mean, so for me, if I took you into one of our search warrants and started showing you all the stuff that's going on, it would be more of a shock because as agents, we've been wading in that water for a bit. So it's not as harsh when we have to confront it because we're getting like a little bit numbed to it, and so that keeps it from being as traumatic. And then along the way, I mean, I can't look at these criminals as monsters. They're humans and they're making poor choices, and start to recognize that. And in some cases, you can even, kind of walk back those choices. In Chicago, I worked drugs. We'd get the drug dealers, and they're like, they knew they're breaking the law, but they just saw it as amoral.
Mhm.
Gang members, I worked them. Like, I get it. I saw why they're doing what they're doing, but they're also violent and so needed to be stopped. And even with the financial crimes, you see that, and these guys are just like putting themselves first, and that's where I saw more of the sociopaths for sure.
That's interesting because, like, did you feel like because some folks might like, "What, a serial killer, they're the threat," and they are,
Yeah, well, yeah,
but, like, if we have a financial criminal, like, maybe destroys, like, a couple 100,000, like, homeowners, right?
yeah,
Like, it destroys their lives, and then people look at it, that's white collar crime, and they kinda go to a country club prison, but they actually destroy people's lives. People might have committed suicide, people might have just got their whole lives wrecked,
yeah.
and very destructive to society.
Well,
Did
I
you
had
ever feel like that their punishment for some of these guys was, like, not really
oh,
with
not
what
even not even close. I had one guy that I had him tagged for stealing $22 million from a couple hundred investors, and he had real products. He just, as people invested, he would just spend the money for himself. And kind of like, how you mentioned earlier, people look at him, and go, man, that guy's successful. Look at the house he has. He's got two Lamborghinis. Well, that's your money.
your money
And they didn't realize that. And he was a legitimate sociopath. One of the victims I talked to, she said, my husband died. And so I took the little bit of life insurance and I invested that with this guy because I have a disabled son and I'm looking to get long-term care. Guy just took the money. And as she was crying and begging, for refund, for help, he's like, don't worry. Next round it's going to come in. And he would just lie, and it didn't affect him at all.
Mhm.
Those guys were the worst. I hated them the most.
Yeah, and it seems like they don't get the level of punishment because, oh, that's financial.
Yeah. Well,
And
this guy,
financial is very destructive.
yeah, this guy I was looking, we could have, and we never would have, but he could have gotten life in prison with all the enhancements. But I was expecting somewhere between 12 and 15 years. And prosecutors come back and they say, "Hey, we're going to offer him 5.5 years." And I thought, "Oh my gosh!" And this is the terror. Like, this case, he pushed the case in trial longer than that. And then the crazy thing is, he goes in, COVID comes, and he ends up spending like 9 months because he gets compassionate relief because of COVID.
Oh,
Because
jeez.
it's white collar. He's not a
Yeah,
threat.
white collar is like to me, it's like it's not. I think society needs to look at it, the amount of damage it's done.
Yeah,
Because when you look at the damage that's done and you really analyze it, because I was a sociology major, it's like I would really try to push the point that this criminal behavior is very destructive to our economy, right?
yeah.
The damage it's doing is not being the punishment is not matching the crime.
I I mean, you're not one of his victims, but you were
Yeah,
because like it trickles down,
just
it
cascades
spills
through the whole
across.
it affects GDP. I mean, it affects everything.
Yeah,
You look at the macroeconomics of it, it's very destructive.
yeah.
You know,
We got people who investigate healthcare fraud. I mean, that's millions of dollars.
it's
You don't think
increasing everybody's premium. I mean,
abs
the more fraudsters you have,
yeah,
the reason the premium keeps on going up, right? On top of the greed that's already there is a whole nother thing.
yeah, yeah,
But the idea, can I work with these companies? Can I know how they operate? The idea that they want like the criminal that they just on his face he does the murder. Well, like everybody understands that.
yeah,
They can understand. They don't understand the sociological kind of damage, the psychological damage that's not murder,
yeah,
but leads to like equivalent pain.
yeah, for more people.
For more people, it's it gets more of a like exponential problem. The exponential effects of it are just super destructive, and it's hard to get people to understand. Like you need some reform,
Yeah. Oh, you don't have to convince me. I'm all in on that.
in on that. Yeah. So one of the things about like what's one of the craziest like stories you ever had like dealing with like a case that was unexpected, like you didn't think it was going to be something it turned out to be.
Uh, so I've had people ask me that, and I made the mistake of actually telling someone what the craziest thing I ever saw was. So I'll give you a PG-13 version of it. So when agents always have downtime, they always sit around and talk. And like when people start saying like, "Oh man, this is the craziest thing I ever saw," I just I say, "I'll let you finish your story." Okay, that's a cute story. We had one with a guy who was distributing child pornography. We do a search warrant at his house. I come upon uh, a backpack and I see rags and tape and plastic bags, and I'm like, "Oh man, this is this guy's go bag that he uses to offend in person."
Mm.
And then I pull out a pair of soiled underwear, and so my discovery was happening at the same time that forensic team was downloading his phone, and he was being interrogated, and he makes a confession that he was a coprophage. And if you don't know what a coprophage is, it's someone who eats poop.
Oh, geez.
And I didn't expect to see that day. And there was more to the story about things that he did, but he would use those items to clog public toilets
Oh,
and then
geez.
harvest.
That's
So,
crazy.
so I learned about that day.
So you get to the very deviant people.
Yeah, and you know when the FBI comes to your house and I've got a warrant where I can search every corner and get into your phones and computers, uh, you learn a lot about human nature, about things that people hide.
Yeah.
So
You
I
get
give
to
you
see all the things people hide.
yeah, I give you a moment to think about stuff that you don't want people to know about, and you're probably a pretty emotionally stable guy, and then you get into with criminals, and there's quite a bit that just kind of shocks you, and you go, I guess I learned about that today.
So the understanding, like I guess is what about being a preacher maybe helped you be an FBI, a good FBI agent?
I think for me, it was taking some of the principles and practices that I had in ministry and then carrying them over, because no matter what type of equipment we have, the guns that we have, our computers, judicial process, eventually we have to interact with humans. And
Mhm.
so if that was victims, now I'm in a sense back into that pastoral role of listening, drawing them out, showing compassion. Informants, I'm doing the same. I'm trying to make them feel valued because they are, putting that high on my list of affirming them for their work. And then even with the criminals, of showing them humanity. And for example, work so many cases where we've got pedophiles, and these guys from the beginning already have shame. They find themselves disgusting. And many people, even police officers, would say, I don't know how you can deal with those guys. Like, I would just want to put a bullet in their head.
Mhm.
And I'm like, yeah, but I've got a job to do. And you just find a way to work with them. And now when I show them some compassion and understanding and I don't condemn them outright, it's unexpected. And, now they're going to open up a bit more.
Well, I think the human understanding, because I mean, to do your job, you can't be just like, slamming everybody. Like
No,
you have to get the job done, but you need to understand the human element, and maybe the judgment. People assume that somebody comes in and it's like, well, you're not the judge.
right,
You're an officer. Like an officer's never going to be the judge.
right.
That's not your job.
My job is to get the evidence, and if I want to if I want to harm them the most, I am going to get them to give me more evidence. So
Bring
if
the
I
case.
come, yeah, coming in slamming guys, yelling at them, screaming, like, I can play bad cop. Bad cop's easy. I've done that a few times. Like, there's dudes who's got their butt kicked and they had to have it happen. But I don't want to start there. I want to start in a place where you're going to feel comfortable and start telling me things you shouldn't be telling me.
Mhm. And what like, I was reading about that you like to use humor. I guess your book is gonna have a collection of, like, humorous, like, moments, but does humor actually help, like, when you're in this kinda job just to be able to get through the day?
Yeah. So there's getting through the day. There's you know, there's dark humor. There's things that if the public saw, they'd wince at. Like, but that's how people are trying to deal with dark situations. And I worked with teen prostitutes, and I remember one of my first encounters where my partner Laura had been working these cases for a while. She brings me in. We're trying to get through to this 15-year-old runaway who's prostituting, and like, Laura is a sweet person, totally kind and wanting to help this girl, and all she's getting back is obstinance. Eh,
Mhm.
So here we've got this taciturn, 15-year-old, and now I'm using humor to break in with her to show her like we're not just police.
Yeah,
We're
not just a
people too.
man kind of
Yeah.
break her down. Just like, yeah, 'cause they probably had to put up the mask, like a girl like that, she's gotta put up the bravado because she's probably really hurt, you know?
Well, also, there's never been an adult in her life that was worth anything. So, here's two more adults saying, "Oh no, we want to help you." And
Probably doesn't
no,
trust
no,
issues.
no, you don't. Nobody your age wants to help me.
Yeah, they got a lot of trust issues because like, the trust has been violated from the probably really early.
Well, I mean, think of this is very crass, but I mean, if you think of it, like, what would it take for a woman to say, "I'm going to start having sex with strangers that are probably disgusting too," and now say, "Oh, okay, now you're 15." That's a tremendous threshold to have to step across, and yet they're willing to do it. So they are either very, very desperate and they are already broken. Like they've had things happen to them where they say, "I'm useless anyway." That's
Yeah.
I can
Usually
walk through that.
family situation got broken in the family, usually,
Yeah.
that's usually the root cause is, like, in their family situation, they were traumatized.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah.
and so do you end up a lot of times with these young kids, like the runaways and the people in the sex trafficking, it's because they're like the families have abandoned them. And then how do you get them in the system to like is the system really gonna support them or does it not really give them any support?
Well, so you ask a question that was our dilemma every time, because we could find the girls and we could arrest the pimps. And then I remember the first time like this is happening, like we're doing this hotel operation. Our undercover targets a prostitute that he thinks might be underage. She comes in, she is. Boom, we get her, we get the guy, and then I go, hell, what do we do now? Because now you've got, I mean, she's a victim. Like, yeah, she broke the law, with prostitution, but we don't want to charge her. But now what do we do? Because she's not going to live in my basement.
Yeah,
We're not going to put her up in a hotel. We send her back to the foster family. She's just going to run away again, and
yeah.
and that's the difficulty where we worked best when we had these NGOs, these non-governmental organizations that
They
now
actually
could step in.
could help them. They actually could actually had a process that could help these girls or these young boys. Because
Yeah,
that's the problem is like if you just look at it from a law point of view,
yeah.
but you don't think about the sociological, psychological point of view, the law is gonna do X. It's gonna
Boom,
find the crime, charge the crime, prosecute the crime, deal with it.
clean cut.
But it's not gonna deal with the softer stuff.
Yeah, the necessary things like, and so here's this 35-year-old woman who was a sex worker herself, so she can talk the talk. She said, "I've been there." But here's my foundation. We've got 5 beds, you're welcome to stay here. And now you've got the guardian ad litem, who's their attorney representing them in juvenile court, coming and
Mm,
helping. And now, and plus there's like this mesmerizing factor that comes from the pimp where their words are just hypnotizing them. And
mhm.
it takes time for them to get away.
Deprogrammed. Yeah, they gotta get deprogrammed if you're in a cult, like, if you were in
Yep.
one of the Jonestown, you gotta get deprogrammed, and, any of these girls under these pimps have to get deprogrammed.
Yeah. So initially, I'm getting slapped and spit on, and there's snotty tissues in my vehicle because we're taking away the one adult who's ever loved her. And
Mm,
it's manipulative, and the young girl doesn't realize this. But like this is the one person who looked out for her, she thinks, and it, would take some time, but we gotta keep them safe for that 2-week period, whatever it might
Yeah,
be.
it's like coming off of, like, an addiction. I mean,
Absolutely.
and they're so like, if you're totally been controlled, mind controlled, psychologically, you know, forced to, be dependent on the pimp, just like, addict is dependent on their drug dealer, right? And they can abuse them, make
Yeah,
them do things, just because they're like, they need that fix. So, like, if they're psychologically in the same kind of scenario,
yeah.
right?
The fix is love. They don't they've never had love,
Yeah.
or it was meager. Parents didn't love them. Everyone else was abusive, and now here's somebody who's saying I mean, these guys are well studied, and so by the time they get to this point, they know what to say. They know how to target some of these vulnerable girls.
Yeah, it's just interesting because we've got these like, if you get past like the street level pimps, then you got these big organizational child sex trafficking situations where you got, international traffickers that are doing like very elaborate criminal organization, more like, yeah, they're like, I don't know, they're actually professional court like crime organizations, right?
We didn't run into that. I mean, we had enough of runaway teens and
You weren't there in
kids.
the big like the big type of situations we had.
No, I had a buddy who was a cyber agent, and he was part of Operation Playpen, which was a large scale child pornography trading platform,
Mhm.
of taking them down. So, I mean, except for the amount of time that it takes to write warrants, to go through the process, go to court, the FBI could go after these guys, the sex traffickers, the guys dealing in pornography. You could do an arrest every day, but we don't
Yeah,
have the manpower or time
there's
for it.
so much of it going on, it's hard to like, it's just a big floodgate,
Oh,
right?
I had a buddy who works this. Now I had worked it, I moved on to other things, and he was the 12-year-old girl online, or a parent looking to trade where somebody could come and assault his kids. Um, and he had one guy that I helped in the arrest. He's like, I don't want to arrest this guy, but he's so persistent. I'm like, I got to.
Yeah,
Like he was focusing on somebody else, and this guy just kept saying, "Hey, hey, 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 hey." He's like, "Let's go arrest him."
go get them. So, like, with all the different things you looked at, your white collar counterterrorism, drugs, public corruption, like which one was the most like, you know, I guess eye-opening to you? Like, out of all of those things, which ones were the ones that you like really like kind of, you know, affected you?
Well, the crimes against children definitely had an effect. It was smaller scale because we're dealing with like a few victims and one pimp, and we didn't have big takedowns, but they were very weighty. We were doing remarkable things, significant things with one person oftentimes. My first 5 years in the FBI, I was a drug agent in Chicago, and that opened my eyes off the bat. So I'm a new agent, and we were going phone tap after phone tap. So that was immediately, I am now listening in on people's lives and witnessing the power that the FBI has through the judicial process of, what it's like to listen in on people's secret conversations, and then constantly out on surveillance and picking up guys that way. So those first years, I learned a lot quickly, in all the paperwork we're doing and the manpower it takes to get on a phone tap.
So as phone taps, has it gone? I would think phone taps are kind, that's like maybe old tech. Now you probably have, like I don't know, like text taps.
So all of it is judicial.
Hmm.
So it's not that the FBI has a special technology to get them. The way that we work is, I forget the year, but all phone carriers have to be CALIA compliant. I forget what the CALIA stands for, but it's, like
So
enforcement
you can get
compliant.
access to it.
So that when we say, "Hey, a judge told us this is okay,"
So
you
you can get
now
it,
route everything to
and
us.
then you can see all those texts, and
All the
then
time. Yeah.
so now with, like, AI, you
Uh,
guys must be using AI to kinda screen through those texts to get what you want?
man, I'm glad I got out of this time. I'm not gonna
You don't know
understand that.
you don't know what they were doing there. Today, I would think that they must use it a lot.
Oh, it's okay, so you're an IT guy.
Yeah, yeah.
We were DOS based in our computer system. Do you wanna guess what year we turned over to a, um,
Like
user
Windows.
interface, a Windows interface? You wanna guess what year we turned over?
Was that 2010?
Oh, you're so generous. No, it was 2012. I mean, I was doing shift F5 to go to a new page
Oh,
until
jeez.
2012. And so, we had green screen tabbing
Oh,
over.
you're just doing old mainframes. Oh,
Oh
okay.
my gosh, until I mean, and now the computer system is actually very good. It goes down all the time, but now it's the bureau has learned. So your question about using AI, probably in about 15 years, they'll be there.
You guys are still running old school. I'm a COBOL guy. I mean, I used to do a lot of mainframe stuff. I'm up to date with all the cloud stuff now. But like my most of my career was like mainframe stuff. Um, and then we had to deal with government, agencies that had mainframes. They had the
Yeah.
COBOL stuff. But so I understand the CRTs, like the old green screens, the
Oh my
orange
gosh.
screens.
Yeah.
But
When
yeah, so that world must have been interesting.
real quick, when I came into the FBI in 2002 in Chicago with about a thousand employees, there were 5 internet terminals.
Oh wow, that's old school. That's real old school.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because yeah, the tech world has gotten so crazy now with
Yeah.
all this all these AI agents and bots and all this stuff that you can do. To the point that people are getting kind of afraid of well, how much actually can you access? Because now you can connect all the cameras that are everywhere. Like you can get people's Ring cameras, you can get their web cameras, you can get any camera that's open to the net,
Yeah.
you could get, and then you could go get a warrant and get everything that's going on. Um,
Yeah, and as long as the warrant's involved, I feel comfortable because there can always be abusives and lies. But hey, if a proper agent is honestly saying, "Here, let me do this," probably the most controversial thing that I came across before I retired was the use of the flock cameras.
mhm.
So i- they're they're plate readers on the streets, and I mean, I used them to find bad guys. I didn't use them
Yeah,
to find ex-girlfriends and
yeah,
keep
yeah.
tabs
You're,
on
you're
them.
trying to find somebody you're trying to get.
Yeah, I saw this hot girl and I memorized her plate number, and now can you
You're not
check
gonna
out where
chase.
she is?
Yeah,
And that was all warrantless. So, I mean, obviously you're in public, so you don't have an expectation of privacy, but it can be abused, of course. It's like anything else. I could abuse using my gun. I could abuse how I work
yeah.
informants. People just need to be straight.
Yeah, it's interesting because, when you started to come up with your book, did you ever been an author before? This is the first time?
Well, it was the first one. I was getting nearer to retirement, and my wife said, "Oh, you should write a book." And I thought, yeah, but I forgot to write down. I meant to write down stories, but man, as soon as I started at the computer, oh yeah, remember that time? Here we go.
All the stuff comes to your
Yeah,
head.
so now I write all about that. There's a chapter. Okay, next. I already know what the next one is. Here we go, and it just flowed. And then I've got notes on my phone for all the other stories that I didn't put in there. But in each case, I'm telling like here's a case that I worked or was a significant part of, and then here's an after action review where looking back, what did we do right? How did we screw it up? How did this succeed in the first place? And maybe throw a couple more vignettes of related stories to these ones we just discussed.
Do you think you would ever do an audio book for that?
Oh, absolutely. So my wife's company, Weaving Influence, has been around 14 years, and they market authors. And that's why my wife was saying, "Hey, I think you'd do well." And they recently started publishing as well. And so now I'm talking to my wife about the audiobook, and I said, obviously I'm going to read it, but I've got some ideas. So I think I'd like to get on the phone or bring somebody in. Like, so here's a case that I was a significant part of, but my buddy was a case agent. I'm gonna bring him in.
Oh, have him
Hey,
talk to.
give me 5 minutes. Give me 4 minutes of like your experience.
Oh, that's
I,
cool.
oh
Yeah,
yeah, it's cool.
yeah,
Here,
definitely.
here's where the topper came. I was driving back from Ann Arbor yesterday, and as we're driving back, we pass the Federal Correctional Institute in Milan, Michigan, where Yahya Farouk Muhammad is housed. And
Mm,
he was a terrorist who was funding Anwar al-Awlaki, and then we caught him trying to get a hitman to kill his judge.
mm.
Huge case, got awards for it. And I tell the wife, like, oh my gosh, what if I could have him give me
Oh,
his
wow.
side of it? So I thought, like,
Can do.
think
Are
that
you
would be,
able to do that?
wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah,
That would be cool.
are you able to do that?
I mean, hypothetically,
Yeah,
you know,
that's
just
cool.
talk to the warden, get a
Yeah, that's awesome.
recorder.
Well, I think it like the cool thing about audiobooks, like I was talking to a film director, and he said, well, you know, when you do audiobooks, it's kind of like if you manage it like a documentary film, but
Mm,
it's this audio version,
yeah.
and you actually kind of map out how you're going to tell the story, and then you're kind of pointing out you could bring other voices in.
Yes.
Then it starts to get it's like, oh, then where's the how's the art direction gonna be? It's like you said, because then you're like you can do it, but you kind of have to put a lens on it. Oh, this is a little bit more of a production than
Yeah.
you just reading it off.
Yeah.
You have to kind of yeah take it. It's a cool creative exercise, because I think then you think about like what you can do with audio. It's
Right.
kind of like radio plays like
Well,
back in the 50s. I always thought those were cool.
oh, yes, yeah. So the whole idea of, like, bringing in other guys is as my wife is trying to manage this, I said, "Hey, look, audiobook's gonna be 16 hours long because I'm just gonna be calling up guys while I'm on the audiobook and, we're gonna be riffing jokes back and forth." And she's like, "You can't do that. That's expensive." And then I thought, "Oh, but what if I get a guy on the phone and I say, 'Hey, tell me your side of what went on and how you saw this?'" So, uh, I think that'll be interesting. And now I'm trying to think of guys I've arrested that might wanna tell about what they did.
Yeah, I think you could put it into a documentary kind of audio series,
Yeah.
and it might extend beyond the book, and you could turn it into like its own kind of audio
Look at
event,
this.
you know,
Look at
like its
this.
own
Right
like a
here,
podcast.
right here, we just figured this out.
Yeah, well, you can do it into a podcast. The podcast can have like excerpts that are like audio books, and there's all kinds of things that you can do with the new media today, that you can extend to different ways. I mean, you could even become like a Netflix show or something. Like, people like true crime.
Yes.
People like to hear about the FBI. It's like you could say FBI this, FBI that. People want to know real stories. You got real accounts of criminal stories. People like that true crime. That's a whole genre.
Yeah. And I think this comes through, I believe in the book that it's the thread throughout is, here's amazing stuff I got to do in the FBI for 24 years. A guy who never handled a gun, was a SWAT operator, firearms instructor, and yet it's all through the lens of this guy's a Baptist pastor and we stuck him in the FBI. So, looking back on how did my pastoral, how did my minister experience play into what I got to see and do? And I think there's an everyman notion to it because I was nothing special.
Yeah, it shows you that kind of
Yeah.
how you can kind of pull you into any person
Yeah.
if they have drive and ambition can go and become what they want to be. And if they have, the whole idea of being FBI is like this. Oh wow,
Yeah.
that's a very somewhat glamorous from a point of view of like wow, I'm gonna actually be that G man.
I,
I'm gonna be that G man. I'm gonna actually do it.
yeah. And that's how I felt when they accepted me. And I pretty much felt that throughout too, of like, this is amazing. Like, yeah, obviously I'm bored. There's tedium, there's frustration, but there were so many times I thought, Can you believe you get to do this? Like, here I am, like at near the end of my career, I'm on the SWAT team. I'm on the perimeter, so I don't have anything much to do but to hold the rifle and make sure nobody runs past me. And I'm listening to the traffic on my headphones as my buddies are in the house, and
Mhm.
how calm, how professional they are. And it sounded like just a broadcast. And I thought, man, if somebody was listening on this, they go, that is so cool, of just guys making the calls and moves, and you can even imagine what they're doing just by hearing the traffic. And I thought it was nice I got to do this.
Well, I think it's important to have like discipline and and procedure, and we count on the authorities having a process because like we're out in the wild, you don't want things to be like the Wild West.
Right.
Like it's people are just going and just I'm just controlling it and doing whatever I want. You want somebody to come in and say, "Hey, there's the sheriff.
Yeah.
there's he's coming in. Here's the marshal. Here's the FBI. Here's the G-man. He's going to make sure that these guys aren't just going around and looting the whole world and threatening their neighbors and doing this and doing that. You want to know that there's somebody out there that's looking at has an eye out for the American people. That there's somebody that's actually going to be there to keep us from getting harmed.
Yeah. And I felt that. I felt very, um, I'll just say blessed, because in ministry, obviously, I was getting to do God's work. So I've always told kids, like, if you can earn a living for your family, that's noble. If you can earn a living for your family and do something that's good for the community, that's doubly noble. I got to do that in ministry, and then I got to do that in my second career with the FBI, like earning earning money for the family, taking care of my family, but also getting to do something good for the community. It's a blessing to be able to have that throughout.
Yeah, I think it's good to be connected to society and feel like you're not just a cog in a wheel, but you're actually helping things move forward and you're actually participating in the democracy, you're participating in the government, and you're actually not the problem. You're part of the solution,
I tried not to be the problem.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's where everybody goes in with it. Like they I think that people will go in the government service and they say, "Well, I'm going to do something." Right, to help because in government service, I mean, you could be in private service, you can make a lot of money in the private sector. You go into the government, you got the prestige, but it's not necessarily going to get paid what you could do privately. So you're giving up something
Yeah.
because you believe in something.
Well,
You believe that you want to help the service to the people.
I had a buddy who graduated from Princeton. And I went to a state school, and I said, "Well, here we both are." But um, he said, I was looking on Facebook about all my friends from Princeton, and like guys are doing amazing things, and CEOs and doctors and such." And I said, "AJ, you're on the FBI SWAT team. They all wish they could be you."
Yeah. 'Cause everybody that, sitting in your corporate cube is like, you might be making that thing, but you're
Yeah,
not. People would love, to be FBI, to be an astronaut, you know, to
yeah,
be somebody like, flying that National Guard Black Hawk or something like, yeah, somebody would rather do that if they could. I think a
yeah.
lot of guys would, and a lot of women would be like, yeah, why can't I get out of the cube and do something like that?
Yeah. Well, and it was a great honor. I enjoyed it very much. When people say, "Hey, thank you for your service," I'm like, I was glad to do it.
Yeah, I think that's important because I think it's that people need to understand, especially some folks that today might not be so into community, but it's like I think community is super important. But I want to thank you for being here today. It always goes by quicker than we ever imagined, but I do have the QR code up there, so it goes right to your preacher to breacher.com. And so if people go to that QR code, that's where they can find everything about you.
Yes, they could. Well, not everything. I try to keep a few
Right.
things.
Everything that you want to
Yeah,
promote.
exactly, and they can follow along. The book will be out in the fall. Unfortunately, some paying customers jumped the line ahead of me, so my wife's company's got to take care of them first. But we'll have the book out in the fall. Right now, it's in the hands of the FBI as they make
Oh, yeah,
sure I'm not.
I was wondering about that. They
Yeah,
probably try to clear it, right?
yeah. I didn't put anything in there. It's going to embarrass them. It embarrasses me more than them.
That's cool. Like, I look forward to that coming out, and, we always have people come back on the show. So if you ever wanna come on the show and talk about it or talk about aspects of, like, if you go on book tour or whatever you wanna
Yeah,
do, we have, we have book release episodes. I've had authors come back to push it through.
absolutely.
So, yeah, I
Yeah,
wanna thank you again for being here on a Saturday afternoon. Um, this has been live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Kick, and will be on major platforms like Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio. By the end of the day tomorrow, I want to thank you for being a guest on the Family Electric Ghost podcast.
thanks so much, Phantom.
Thank you.